I hope everybody's having a really, really good week between Christmas and New Year's, holiday celebrations all through December, and maybe some of you are even off of work. I love that. So, we're having a little visit today. I'm very, very excited to share with you today just a wonderful, wonderful experience from the Houston Quilt Show. You're going to love our guest today. Just really spectacular time. We're going to see Karen Fisher and her amazing works. It's kind of like history meets quilts. She just really has a passion for infusing some really wonderful elements historically that help tell the story in her quilts, and you're going to really enjoy that. But I'm also just wanting to say I'm filling in for Alex, who she's a little under the weather, and really, I think she's going to be okay, but she didn't want to be coughing and hacking on air, and I don't blame her one bit. So Alex has cracked the whip and given me some instructions, and hey Alex, I know you're here. But one of the things that she wanted to remind you of is our Pick a Pedal BOM for 2024. I'm going to remind you of this again at the end. But this quilt, this Pick a Pedal quilt that we have done now with the quilt show, that is a beautiful quilt. I know I have a picture of that. Hang on a second. Nope, that's not it, and that's not it. I know I have a picture of it. Dang it, where is it? Well, here's what I am going to tell you. Well, this will get you there, kind of. Listen, this is always free for our members on the Quilt Show, thequiltshow.com. And it is a yearly thing, but our contract with the artist runs out on December 31st. So you can get all 12 months of the Pick a Pedal quilt if you go now and sign up, join. If you're already a member, just go. Look at this picture. It says learn up at the top. You'll click on the learn section, and there you will see Pick a Pedal, and it says learn more. And that's where you can go and download all of the pattern, because it will be removed from the site on December 31st. And then the good news is, if you're not a member and you join now, not only will you get all of these patterns for this year, but you will be in the loop for next year's BOM. It's double whammy time. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that. I am not sure why I am not finding the Pick a Pedal picture, because I thought I brought it in. But anyway, I'll try to look for it and see if I can't show you that at the end today. And I just want to let all you guys know as well that Hugo and I are doing a tour to Portugal and Spain in May. We have 6 spots left, and that's like a couple and a couple of friends, and just, I mean, there's not much left. You know, I do a lot of traveling with tours like this. Now, it's not a quilt tour per se, but you're going to get to experience textiles and quilt shops and so forth on side excursions that you can take. I know one quilt shop in Lisbon that I can't wait to go and see as well. But that trip, it's like a 16-day trip, and it is less expensive than most 10-day trips. So I'm going to just give you my website, rickytims.com. If you'll go there, the first thing on that page is the information about Portugal and Spain. But yeah, we're going to be starting in Porto, beautiful, beautiful Porto, just amazing. And that's really close to where Hugo was born and raised. And then we're going to be on the Douro River in the wine country. I had a lady the other day tell me that she says, well, I don't think the trip's for me because I don't drink so much. Well, we're just going to the wine country to take a wine cruise. We're not going on a drinking tour, although some of you might choose to do that. But we will be in the beautiful Douro River Valley. And then, I don't know if you're aware of these waves, but these are the largest waves in the world. Of course, it depends on when the waters are doing what they're doing. But seriously, Nazaré has these 100+ foot waves, and that only professional surfers can get out there. We will be there, as well as getting into Lisbon. Beautiful, beautiful Lisbon, starting up in Porto, but of course going all through Spain, Valencia, Granada, Evora, all these wonderful historic places. And of course, we're going to end up in Barcelona. This is Gaudi's Sagrada Familia. It is almost completed. It has been a century in the making, and this is one of the most spectacular buildings I've ever been in. So I'm just going to let you guys know, if you're interested, there's the website up at the top right there, rickytims.com, and you can get more information. We are going in May. I think it's the 11th through, I can't remember the dates. My brain is, but it's in the middle of May, and it takes up a couple of weeks. So I would love for you to go with us to Portugal, you guys. I'm looking over, just seeing the one-click download on Pick a Pedal Paddles. Oh, that's great. So if you are able to see in your comments, some of the moderator has put in the link directly to the Pick a Pedal, and you can go there. But if you go to thequiltshow.com, click on the Learn button, and you can find it there as well. So anyway, we're really excited to be with you today. I have been working on a major quilt all year, and I've peeked. I mean, I've given little tips, and not tips, little peeks, little like, ooh, I get to see a little of Ricky's quilt that he's working on, and I'm going to show you what I've been working on, because in this quilt there's a huge tree, there's a big raven, and this raven is got a full moon behind it with a clock, but the raven is holding a pocket watch, and I needed that pocket watch to be really detailed. And so I've done hand embroidery. Don't laugh, it's not my wheelhouse. I've done hand embroidery to create this pocket watch, and I've been working on that this morning. It's taken me, well, we've had holidays, right? So if I said it took me 10 days to do this, understand that I have had family and we've all had holidays. But I'm going to show you my pocket watch. I'm going to try to get really close so you can see all the details that I've done. So even the numbers, the Roman numerals are all hand stitched. And this is, again, this is not my wheelhouse, but I'm pretty happy with it. I now have left to do the little twirly dial on top and the little thing that holds the chain. And I will have to also embroider the chain. But nonetheless, there's my little pocket watch. And kind of fun to see that. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing that. Yeah, it's the raven. It is my raven. Debbie, I see she's shouting out raven. I am a raven lunatic, you guys. All right, so I really want to get into this wonderful interview. It is going to be really super exciting. This is Karen Fisher. Let me just show you a little bit of Karen's work. So she is from Tucson, Arizona. She loves Tucson immensely. This certainly has a very Native American feel, and I'm just going to, oops, not that one. And this one as well is one of hers. And you're going to really enjoy not only seeing her quilts, but you're going to really enjoy listening to how her brain thinks in the way of how she brings these ideas into her quilts. So without further ado, we're going to give Lilo shouts out for doing the interview for us at Houston. And I hope you'll enjoy this. And I will be back at the end to add comments and remind you a few other things. So this is Karen Fisher.
Hi everyone, we're with Karen G. Fisher here at your special exhibition, One Quilter's Journey from the Middle Ages to the Stars. So you have a wonderful story, but the story really begins in Tucson.
It does begin in Tucson. I've lived in Tucson since I was 10. I sewed all my life, I made clothing, I made art from when I was very little. When my first granddaughter was born, I thought, well, aren't grandmas supposed to make baby quilts? And I made her a baby quilt, and I loved the process. Because I had sewn most of my life, worked with color and fabric, if I can fit something on a body, I can make something flat.
Right.
And I started. And by the time I got to the quilt that is behind us, my Tucson quilt, it was made for a statewide challenge in Arizona called 100 Years, 100 Quilts for the Arizona Centennial in 2012. And I thought, well, I'm going to let other people do the rest of the state. I'm doing Tucson.
Because that's where you're from.
That's where I'm from. And I did lots of research. I learned a lot about my home city. One of the coolest things that I learned is that Tucson is probably one of the oldest continuously occupied sites in North America. People going back 10,000 years.
Wow.
When the Spanish came, they kept the name, Tucson, which means either Black Mountain, the base of the Black Mountain. The Black Mountain is the extinct volcano in the middle of Tucson that most people don't realize is there. And then I arrived with the Air Force. So that's why the planes are here.
The airplanes.
The airplanes. Travelers who came to Tucson in 1857, the first stagecoach arrived with some of our first Jewish immigrants. Tucson has a very strong Jewish community. The Chinese came here with the railroad in 1880, but then after the Chinese Exclusion Act and they couldn't work for the railroad anymore, they planted gardens, they opened restaurants, and they opened markets, and then they opened laundries. Now think of that. That's the bottom of the economic tier. You're washing other people's dirty clothes.
Right.
But they took it, and they stayed, and they built businesses, and they're still a strong part of the Tucson community. Down here, we have a representation of one of the mirrors that is made by the Steward Mirror Lab. They make telescope mirrors. The biggest one they've made so far is a 10-meter mirror. It's a whole different technology that they invented for these big mirrors. They're lighter in weight. They are made in a spinning oven that gives them a curved surface. So instead of a big glass blank that has to be ground into that curve, it's curved, and then it's silvered. It's not actually silver, it's aluminum.
Right.
And Tucson is a world center for astronomy and professional astronomers. So at the bottom here, I have the Desert Museum, which is the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. The arts. Dendrochronology was first figured out at the University of Arizona, and they still have one of the world's largest collections of samples.
And you are someone who likes learning about other subject matters.
I do.
So you didn't just do Tucson, you now moved into
astronomy and geology. When I went back to school in my 30s and 40s to get my fine arts degree, I had to take one semester of one science to fulfill my requirements.
Right.
So I took astronomy. It sounded less scary than some of the others, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
So then I took more astronomy. I took geology, I took meteorology. So eventually, with art education, I was qualified to teach both art and earth science.
So let's go look at one of your geology quilts.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, the geology classes that I took, I realized that I could use a very, very traditional technique, English paper piecing, to make the crystals.
Right.
They are all geometric shapes that are fit together. So I played around with English paper piecing in lots of colors, and I made crystals. This piece is called geode, like a geode that you would get that's sliced open, that you see crystals inside.
Yeah.
And that's part of where I made a great big one with lots, like 45 different crystals. That's a wall piece that's like 9 feet tall. I decided I'd make a smaller one.
I was going to say, after that, I think I'd want to go a little smaller. Yeah.
So I like the white one in the middle. The white one in the middle is gypsum. If you have sheetrock in your house, you have gypsum in your house. That's what sheetrock is made out of.
Oh.
However, gypsum, there is a mine in Mexico that was discovered that if you look it up on National Geographic, Mexican mine, giant crystals, they are crystals of gypsum that are 40 and 50 and 100 feet long. Oh, and in the pictures, the little orange things are the people climbing around on them.
Oh, wow.
And they had to close that part of the mine, reflood it. It was very dangerous because it was so hot. They had to wear, they looked like spacesuits, orange spacesuits, for working and doing the research inside the space. Yeah. But that's gypsum in the middle.
Oh, very nice.
which is a very boring mineral all by itself.
Well, but it got center stage.
It
here
got center stage.
for you. Very nice. Okay, so now let's look at some of your gridded work.
Okay, let's go back that way.
So this is one of your gridded pieces, and what I found so wonderful, besides the color, the color combination, which really strikes you, it's also that you've added these buttons that are, some of them are a little bit sparkly and shiny, and others are more matte for that nice dimension.
Well, all of my grids are based on mathematical progressions one way or another. I am not a mathematician unless I can see it. This particular grid I call my graduated grid. The smallest version of it starts with 1-inch squares, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. This one starts at 2 and goes out to 6 inches on either end. And what I discovered with this particular grid is if I kept going, I could quilt the universe. It just keeps going.
Right.
The biggest quilt I've made was a king size, and it was only out to 8 and 9-inch blocks. So you could just keep going.
But it's exponentially that's getting larger and larger.
Larger and larger.
And it's because you're working on sides. You have 2 sides, so that's double.
Yes. So you just keep surrounding the center with the next size. Now the buttons, I use lots of embellishing on my quilts. And all of my buttons are sewn on. I don't glue. I don't trust glue. I grew up in a dry climate. Glue fails.
Right.
They are all sewn on. Now in this case, I used a piece of tulle and that stabilizer that washes away to make the shape, completely covered that half circle with the buttons, and then washed away the stabilizer, folded under the edges of the tulle, so that way I was sewing on a half circle shape rather than all those buttons, because I couldn't do all those buttons in this particular case until the whole thing was assembled, and I wanted to see the size and shape that was going to be.
That was what I was wondering, is did you sew the buttons on first, or they came on after you?
In this case, they came on, well, the buttons always go on last.
Yeah.
I do all my embellishing last, after the quilting, usually even after the binding.
Oh, okay.
The embellishing happens last. It is almost always stitched through to the back so that it's completely stable, so that it lays flat. Now, I've had only one judge over the years ding me for that stitching showing through to the back.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I want those buttons nestled down into the fabric. I don't want
them to stay
them
there,
just kind of laying there on the fabric.
Right,
I want them to stay. I want them to look like they're really down in the fabric.
Yeah, yes. Well, one of the other subject matter that you also took a really deep dive in is lends itself to the title of your exhibition, is that you went back to the Middle Ages.
Yes, I did.
So you've got several quilts on the other side that are really spectacular. So we're going to look at those.
Okay.
Okay, this one is a really interesting compilation of a variety of different symbols from different areas of the Middle Ages. So tell us about this piece.
Well, I became interested in the Middle Ages actually very young. When I went back to school at the U of A, my first art history professor was a medievalist. I took 3 more classes from her and learned a lot about the Middle Ages, and I had also seen a lot of Middle Ages art as a child living in France with my Air Force family.
Right.
And I was fascinated with the symbolism. And early on in my quilting career, I fell in love with gold embellished fabrics, and I began buying them. Not in huge quantities, a yard, a half yard, a quarter yard, if that was all I could get, including fat quarters. And I have kept them separate from my non-metallic fabrics, but still by color. So, reds, greens, yellows, whatever, including all the neutrals. We don't think of gold embellished fabrics as coming in brown and beige, but they do.
Right.
This quilt has 150 plus metallic fabrics in it.
Wow.
So that's the reason that it just has a different look to it than non-metallic fabrics. They all have a little bit of shine, and there are a few buttons, but the very center is based on the Celtic Battersea shield, which is actually pre-Roman Britain. The very bottom is from the Sutton Hoo ship burial in southern England, which is post-Roman, pre-Christian. The outside of the big circle is from a pattern by Nora McMeeking. I took a workshop from her. She made designs based on Roman inlaid floors in Italy
Yes.
that were made from salvaged Roman marbles, where they took all those beautiful colored marbles from the ruins, recut, repolished, reset them into floor designs.
Yeah, it does look very much like a floor pattern
Yes.
that you would see.
And
then
just,
this is, I think, very interesting, where you've used the fabric and it looks like stained glass
yes,
windows
and
in
I learned
cathedrals.
how to work with those bilaterally symmetrical fabrics from Paula
Of
Nadelstern.
course.
I took 2 classes from her over the years. She even gave me her permission to teach her methods. We got to know each other a bit.
Nice.
And so we have, they're called mozarabic arches, the horseshoe arches, which are seen primarily in Spain, Romanesque arches, and then the Gothic at the bottom.
So you're covering all the
I am
all the
covering
elements.
the whole Middle Ages and all of Europe.
Yes. And what you said was this is the first time this quilt has been seen out
Yes.
in public. So is this a new piece?
This is a brand new piece. When I was invited to submit a proposal for my own work, I went home, I looked at what I had, and I thought, I need some big anchor pieces.
Yes.
So I did this big one. I did on the one on the other side of this wall, which has all 6 of my grids combined.
Wow.
And with Tucson, with this one, with the gridlock one, I made them in sections purposely. And then I assembled them. They overlap a little from section to section. And that was the way they were designed, because I have a regular sewing machine.
Oh, so you did all of this on a domestic sewing machine?
Yes, it's all done on a domestic sewing
And
machine.
the other question is possibly how do you hang this? Because there could be the potential of a lot of sort of dog earring on the corners, because
those outside edges are reinforced with, it's either called Timtex or Peltex,
okay.
that make them very stiff.
Okay, so they stay nice and flat.
They stay nice and flat. Now this is the first time it has hung at a quilt show, and I'm seeing a little bit of wobble.
Right.
But yes, I thought about that. Both the pieces with points that stick out, how to reinforce those parts that are sticking out so that they don't just collapse.
Right. And for those who would really be interested in learning about more of your work, you have a book out, correct?
My book is on my grids.
Okay.
None of this has gone into books yet, and I don't know that it could. It's so specific to the Middle Ages,
okay,
and to the kinds of techniques that I use. Now, the one right next to you, which I know we're not going to look at up close, I also use a lot of broderie purse
okay,
in my quilts that have imagery, and if I can find that fancy imagery in fabric,
right,
I will take advantage of that fabric and fussy cut and figure it out, and let somebody else do a little bit of my work.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
And so what is the title of your book with the grids?
my book is Easy Grid Quilts,
Okay.
and it has my first 5 grids and variations on them, and I have since invented a 6th grid, which I hope to do a pattern for, but I haven't yet, and it's based on a herringbone weave.
Okay.
So if you think of a herringbone weave and the way you have strong horizontals and verticals, and it looks like it's kind of zigzagging,
Right.
that's my herringbone grid.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This has been really interesting seeing the
Thank you very
progression
much.
of your work over the years and the diversity of your work over the years.
Thank
It's
you.
lovely. Thank
I've
you so
enjoyed it.
much.
We always want to thank our guests. This is Karen G. Fisher. Karen, thank you so much for taking time to visit with Lilo in Houston for your special exhibit. I'm reading the comments. You guys, it's like I'm gobsmacked by the intricacy. Wow, these are amazing, and loving the history behind them. I have always loved the whole history of quilting, and not only the history of quilting, but how that we infuse different things in our world into our quilts. I know you know what I mean. When I'm teaching, I tell everybody a quilt is more than a quilt, and making a quilt is more than just making a quilt. Even if your quilt doesn't have any special significance and like metaphorical, imagery and words and esoteric thoughts, you are infusing your life into that quilt. And when you see that quilt, you'll remember, oh, this was when my grandkid was born, or oh, this is right when we got back from our trip to France and I used these special fabrics that I got there. Your life is entwined in those quilts. And I just think the memories and the meaning and all of that that goes into our quilts is one of the things that makes them so very special. Now, you guys, I want to remind you two things I talked about up at the front. Number one, go to rickytims.com, and on rickytims.com you are going to find the link right there on the main page to our upcoming trip to Portugal and Spain with Hugo. We are going to have a great time. You guys, do you know that this is not just bucket list? It is one of the premier destinations, and the cost effectiveness of the trip to Portugal and Spain is so wonderful. Now is the time to go. It is a huge destination. Of course, Hugo's Portuguese, so you're going to get to rub shoulders with him. Hugo's brother, Fabio, who you're going to love, he is also going to be on the trip. So we've got two Portuguese, and then, of course, the tour guide that's going to give us all the history lessons and everything that goes with it. So I know that many of you would be interested. Please do just go and check out the information. You can click through on my website. Just click through and you can get even more details and pricing and all of that on there. But it is an extremely cost-effective trip. And then I also want to remind you that the Pick a Pedal, which has been the 2024 TQS, the Quilt Show Block of the Month, that goes away on January 1. So December 31st is the last day. If you are a member, this is free to you. And if you are not a member and you can join now, you can go download all 12 months of instructions and pattern, all of that, and you'll be a member for next year. And our 2025 BOM is Laurel Ridge, which you see on the top of this page. You would also be able to have access to that. So right now is the time to get 2 for 1. It is a super good time of the year to get involved with the Quilt Show. If you're not familiar, we are an online streaming television show for quilters. My co-host, Alex. Hey, Alex, I'm sorry you're feeling bad today. And I've been doing this since 2007. Right now, like Netflix for quilters, we have over 425 shows ready for you to watch right now from all over the years, professionally done, and you get to be a part of our community. So it's really interactive and fun. I'm wishing you all the very best for the days ahead. I hope that you will have a safe and fun New Year's Eve. Maybe you'll get a kiss. Wouldn't that be nice? And maybe you will be with us in our 2025. I am ready to turn the page and start a new chapter. You guys are wonderful. I'm so grateful that you're part of my quilting, my creative family, and I look forward to seeing you in the year 2025. So saying goodbye to all of you guys. Thanks for spending time with me today. It's been really, really fun. Take care.